ये प्रयास होना चाहिए कि हमारा रुपया पूरी दुनिया में ज्यादा एक्सेसिबल भी हो, एक्सेप्टेबल भी हो.
A globalized rupee, that's the message from the government. But what does it mean? A global currency is basically a reserve currency. It is used in global trade, it's held by most central banks, and it's easily convertible. Rather, you can buy and sell this currency easily. And how many such currencies are there? Not many. The US dollar is the biggest one. It makes up 60% of all foreign exchange reserves, plus 40 to 50% of global trade. Other examples are the euro and the pound sterling. But nowadays, a lot of countries are de-dollarizing. They're moving away from the US dollar. China wants to globalize its yuan. BRICS is talking about its own currency. And now India wants to globalize the rupee. But why the sudden rush? Well, one reason is financial. Many countries are struggling with foreign reserves. They use dollars to repay loans and to trade. As a result, they're running out of dollars, like Sri Lanka did in 2022. So these countries are looking at other options, like trading in local currencies. The second reason is political. Some major exporters are under Western sanctions. Countries like Russia, China, even Iran, they're all sanctioned. So you cannot use dollars to buy from them. So what do countries do? They look beyond the US dollar. They try to use local currencies. And India's reasons are a mixture of both of these, political and economic. India trades a lot with countries like Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, countries that are low on dollar reserves. We also trade with sanctioned countries like Russia and Iran. So we need alternatives to the US dollar. But beyond this, there is also a third reason, a strategic goal. India aims to become the third largest economy in this decade. So we're talking about a global power, which means you cannot depend on foreign currencies. You need something more reliable, like a globalized Indian rupee. It would protect you from foreign volatility. It will also insulate you from economic warfare. So we've answered the what and the why. Now let's look at the how. It won't happen overnight. Just look at the Chinese. After the 2008 recession, they decided to globalize their currency, the yuan. It's been almost 16 years now, yet the yuan makes up just 5.8% of international payments. It's still behind the dollar, the euro, and the pound. So do not expect miracles with the rupee. With that said, let's look at what India can do. And just a disclaimer, there is no exact handbook here. Different currencies had different paths to globalization. The pound used colonization, the dollar used the Second World War, and the euro used institutions. But if a country wants to globalize its currency, most economists talk about four requisites, four things that you need to do. The first is financial stability. Your overall debt must be under control, your inflation must be moderate, and your per capita income should be high. Various RBI committees have talked about this. They say fiscal deficit should be less than 3.5% of the GDP and inflation must be less than 5%. And these levels must be maintained over a long period of time. Only then you signal stability. And I'm afraid India is not there yet. India's fiscal deficit is 5.8% of the GDP, so we need to fix it first. That is the first requirement. The second and the third requisites are linked. And the logic is quite simple here. You need more people to buy and hold the rupee, but they should have a reason to do that. Either India should export a lot of goods, in which case you can use the rupee to buy those exports, or it must be a great investment. Let's look at exports first. India makes up just 2% of global exports. The US makes up 8.5% and China makes up almost 15%. So India's share needs to increase. If not, other countries may not want the rupee. Just look at Russia. They decided to call off the rupee-ruble trade system. Why? Because Moscow was stuck with billions of unusable rupees, which brings us to the investment angle. Let's go back to the year 2010. Assume that you had $1 back then. $1 was worth 45 Indian rupees. In 2010, almost 14 years have passed. Today that $1 is worth almost 83 Indian rupees. So the dollar has appreciated in value, but the rupee has not, meaning the rupee has not been a good investment. So you need to expand your exports and make the rupee desirable. Finally, let's look at the fourth requisite. Removing state controls. You can pump endless foreign money into Indian markets, but the opposite is not allowed. You cannot take unlimited amounts of rupees outside India. There are limits on this movement, and these limits are called capital controls, and investors do not like them. So the challenge ahead is huge, but the good news is that India is quite serious about it. In 2022, the RBI announced a big move. It allowed international trade settlements in rupees. Basically, traders could buy and sell in rupees, and many countries now accept the Indian currency. Countries like Bhutan, Nepal, the UAE, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, even Iran, all these countries allow trade in Indian rupees. Plus, India's exports are gradually rising. India's total exports were worth $500 billion in the year 2020. They increased to $770 billion in 2022, and they were expected to reach $900 billion in the last financial year. We're still waiting for official data. So to recap, there is a strategic need to globalize the rupee. There is political will to do it, and the financial requisites are slowly being achieved. This is a marathon where focus is the key. India's time to shine is now.